Excuse me. If I could have everyone's attention. If I could have everyone's attention. Louder. If I could have everyone's attention, we're going to have a few remarks. There are a few seats. Well, that was actually helpful. If I could have everyone's attention, we're going to have a few remarks. There are some chairs around tables. We also have some seating upstairs in the balcony, and you are welcome to head up there as well. And I apologize for breaking up the conversation here, but we'll soon get back to that. I want to start the evening. Give everyone a moment here. I want you to do it just for the fun of it.
You want me to do it? Last night I interrupted Whitney. She'll probably know.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. My name is Rob Bruce, and I have the privilege and pleasure of serving as the Dean of the Suzanne M. Glasscock School of Continuing Studies. And I'd like to start this evening by saying thank you to Susie and Mel. Susie and Mel, we simply would not be the school we are today without your support, and that goes so far beyond a name. Thank you so much. I would also like to recognize several special guests who are in attendance, and please, if you would hold your applause till the end. We have Vice President Reggie DeRoche and Paula Gilmer DeRoche, former President David Lebron and Ping Sun, our new provost, Amy Dittmar, and my fellow deans from around the university are here. I appreciate your support. Linda Anderson, Bob and Kathleen Clark, the Anderson and Clark families are here with us. Catherine and Ed Segner, Ed, I saw you earlier, and you're right there. Ed is our advisory board chair. We also have several members of our Glasscock Advisory Board who are here with us today. Glasscock colleagues, from staff to faculty to students. You have about 100 students upstairs on the second floor in language classes right now. You also on the third floor have a class in our Masters of Liberal Studies program. I tried to convince the professor, Dennis Houston, to bring the class down here, and he said no. We have Glasscock friends and family. My wife, Gretchen, where are you, Gretchen, who said do not mention her? There's my wife, Gretchen. And that's just about everyone in the room, but we are missing a couple of people. Dr. Jim Pomerantz, who is a student of the school, an advocate, a supporter. His spouse, Dr. Mary McIntyre, is the founding dean of the school. They were unable to be here tonight. They are traveling, but Mary has graciously agreed to send us a message.
Good evening. I couldn't be here in person tonight. I am so pleased to welcome you to this grand celebration of 55 years of continuing studies. It was my great pleasure and honor to be a part of this vital service to the broader community for more than 40 of those years. During that time, change became the constant. What had been called the Office of Continuing Studies became a school, and I was named the first dean. What had been a few staff offices in the library became a metal building, and then a handsome space where you are now. Enrollments grew to multi-thousands a year. Professional programs were added, the master's degrees, and online programs. The real constant throughout this change, a motivated, strong continuing studies staff, and fine teaching by Rice faculty and community instructors. Now the school is reaching a whole new level of excellence and competence with the leadership of Rob Bruce and the support of President DeRoche. Despite the many challenges that the school and our whole society have faced in the last few years, new programs are flourishing and the future looks bright for both the school and the university. I want to recognize two people vital to the success of the school for nearly 25 years, Susie and Mel Glasgow. Before I ever met them, they had become faithful continuing studies students, taking course after course in the personal development program. Like Rice's founding president, Edgar Odell Lovett, they envisioned Rice as a valuable service to the broader community. After we became friends, they then went on to endow the school. And we were so proud to have a woman's name on the school, especially this woman. Very early on, Susie also saw the real need for a space on campus expressing the importance of the school and providing the best experience for students. And Susie can be very persuasive, as Rice leaders learned. Without her persistence, this building would never have happened. She and Mel were with us every step of the way, making the Anderson Clark Center a reality. Of course, special thanks to the Anderson Clark family as well, and all of you here tonight. It's my pleasure to turn the program over to Susie Glasgow.
Thank you, Mary, for the introduction and for years of friendship. And thank every one of you for coming. Your being here tonight proves the impact of the Continuing Studies School has made and is making in Houston and the digital world. Several of you have asked tonight how Mel and I became involved and became supporters of continuing studies. Now, some of you know the story about a young woman living in West Jew with 2 small children and a husband who traveled most of the time. She was desperate for adult companionship, and somehow she found out that Rice offered courses in the evening. So she found a babysitter who would come on Wednesday nights. So for a couple years, she took whatever course was taught on Wednesday night. Yes, she figured it out. It was me. When Mel was able to get his life a little more where he could schedule it, he started taking courses too. And we went along like that and just had a wonderful time, and it would have stayed. But then Rice undertook its first comprehensive capital campaign. And as Mel and I talked about how we wanted to support Rice, he suggested, well, what about continuing studies? That's what you love. Well, they had a nice little booklet, and it mentioned all these things they wanted to do. It just didn't mention anything about continuing studies. But we met with Malcolm Gillis and had a nice conversation, and Mel said, you know, Malcolm, I think I'd like to give a gift to continuing studies. Malcolm hesitated for a minute and said, what a good idea. And so the adventure began. When you look back at continuing studies, it really began with Dr. Lovett and his original remarks for the founding of the university. Now, he talked about lifelong learning and the university's responsibility in it. But in all honesty, the university didn't do a whole lot about it. Oh, sporadically, they'd do a few things, but not much. And then in 1967, 55 years ago, Dr. Wishmeyer was asked to prepare some lectures aimed at engineers to bring them up to date with the latest research and findings. And he did so, and it was interesting to me that his first lecture had something to do with petrochemicals. Now, neither Mel nor I were at that lecture, but we've always felt it was somewhat prophetic that that was the subject, considering our later careers. Linda Driscoll kept that something that Dr. Wishmeyer had started going. And then she brought in a young graduate student working her PhD named Mary McIntyre. Mary grew the program and grew it until President George Rupp said, this isn't a program anymore, this is a school, and a school needs a dean. And so it went on. Later, as I told you, Malcolm Gillis accepted our gifts, and then we had sort of a whole new look on continuing studies. Next, I was able to, talk to David Lebron, and we agreed that there should be a building, as long as we raised all the money for it. However, we got right toward the end, and all of a sudden, the Board of Trustees had a time limit, and we were just a tad short, 2%. And David, bless his heart, went and found some university funds, and we made it on time, and we got the approval, and you're here because of that. For this building itself, Linda and Ken Anderson, Bob and Kathleen Clark, put together the major financing, and a lot of people contributed. This building and the endowment have allowed continuing studies to grow in ways that it never could before. Before, we were always dependent on campus classrooms. But you know, the faculty and the students, they get to the point they want to use these rooms, and it got awkward. When Mary announced her much-deserved retirement, the university set out on a national search to find a dean. I was on that search committee, and I'm going to tell you honestly, it did not start well. I was not encouraged. But then we had a late entry, a young man from North Carolina with UT and A&M blood in his system and degrees to prove it. And what had he be doing? He had been working in what they were calling at that time distance learning. Mary had been talking about this. We could see this was where we had needed to go. And here was somebody who had experience in that and a lot more. Rob Bruce came, and he had enough time to get settled in before COVID hit. Within a couple weeks, he had turned the entire continuing studies program online. And not only that, he was very instrumental in helping several other schools on the campus get their programs online. Now, the idea of putting my name on this school was not mine. And in all honesty, I was somewhat less than enthusiastic at first. Eric Johnson convinced me that continuing studies was such a people and community-oriented area that people would associate with a person. I don't know if I'm comfortable with it yet, but I gotta tell you, it is a real thrill when someone I've never seen before walks up to me and thanks me for the experience that they've had at this school. Me, no. It's so many people who make this happen. But if you'll let me be your poster child, I will love it. Now, it's my turn to turn this mic over to the Dean of the Suzanne M. Glasscock School of Continuing Studies, Dr. Robert Bruce. Thank you, Robert.
You know, after 5 years, you would think I would learn one important lesson: never, ever follow Susie Glasscock in a speech. So it's an easy rule. Thank you, Susie. You know, tonight I find myself in an enviable position. I have the opportunity to boast about 55 years of continuing studies at Rice. It's enviable somewhat because for 50 of those years, I was not here. So I can just brag with no shame and no modesty whatsoever. And I intend to do exactly that. But before I do, there's something I would like for us to consider. As I prepared for tonight and looking back, it wasn't just the progress that the school had made. It wasn't just the progress that was noteworthy. What truly struck me was how this compared the 2020s to the 1960s. It was almost as if you have this duality here, and there exist astounding similarities between our past and present. Continuing Studies was born out of an unprecedented decade that brought incredible advancements matched only by its great challenges. And today, in this very decade, the same could be said. At the onset of the decade, our nation elected a new president, taking office at a tumultuous time. Glance back to make sure that's working. It's a decade marked by calls for justice, by calls for civil rights, and a growing desire to step forward. And while we seek to take important steps on earth, we also set our sights upward toward a giant leap for humankind. And there were several activities, obviously, over the past few weeks and days. I see our resident Martian geologist over there, Kirsten. The decade brings progress in education, but a teacher shortage threatens to slow this progress. Advancements in technology promise to radically change the way we live and work. This is especially true in Houston, where we are leading the nation in medical advancements. And by contrast, the decade also sees our nation face a health crisis that changes life as we know it. I believe this is the largest gathering that we have had in this building since COVID began. We see a younger generation that seems very different than our own. Yet their optimism and goodwill fill us with hope. At Rice, the decade finds us bidding farewell to a president who brought growth and national renown. Thank you, President Lebron. And we also welcomed a new president, one who brings the promise of new opportunities and a bold vision for the future. Reggie, thank you for being here. So am I speaking of the 1960s or the 2020s? Without the images, it is a little difficult to tell. Change and progress have certainly been made in the last 5 decades, but at a fundamental level, the challenges we face today are the same challenges we were facing when Continuing Studies was founded in the 60s. At the heart of these challenges are questions. Questions like, how do we provide greater access and equity? How do we ensure that Houston's children receive a world-class education that prepares them for college? We have several educators from across the city here tonight. We have our new Assistant Dean for Education, Brenda Ronhell, who actually is not on payroll yet. Thank you for being here, Brenda. How do we equip a modern workforce in a new knowledge economy? How do we advance true lifelong learning? Learning not as a stage of life, but as a way of life. These are the challenges and questions that have motivated and guided the Glasscock School from our very first class to tonight's celebration. We exist to extend the excellence of Rice to every corner of Houston and beyond. We exist to meet the moment. We do not measure ourselves by the years and time that have passed. We measure ourselves by the progress we have made. And tonight I want to share a little bit of that progress with you. So between Mary and Susie and President DeRoche, it's difficult to tell who the true headliner is. One thing is abundantly clear, it's not me. So knowing that, I don't have a lot of time to do this, but I did want to narrow it down to a few of our greatest hits. We'll start with our first course, which Susie has already mentioned. It set the trajectory of the school really as a responsive mechanism for what was needed by Houston and the Rice alumni. It was inspired by the need by the Rice engineering alumni. In our first course, the title was The Physical Basis of Hydrocarbon Processing at Low Temperatures. I'm an English major, So Ed is going to explain that to me a little later. But the course set a standard, the first course set a standard that we still hold true today. We exist to meet the needs of Rice and Houston's workforce. So when we first offered that course, the population of Houston was around, I think it was 1.5 million. Today it is more than 6.6 million. We are the most diverse city in the nation, and there are 145 languages spoken in Houston homes. In response, the Glasscock School launched language programs that served literally thousands of students across the decades. Each one of these students represents a story. I mentioned the students who were up there tonight, and we have the founder of that program. Josephine, would you raise a hand? One of the stories like Alexander Hernandez. Alexander arrived in Houston from Venezuela in 2018 seeking political asylum. So this is 2018. He was 27 years old, completely alone. He spoke no English. He got a job at Rice's Cohen House, and his co-workers convinced him to join the Glasscock School and the English as a Second Language program. It was there that he mastered English. But that's not all he mastered. This year, Alexander left Rice with his master's degree in global affairs. We were the pathway. As the population expanded in Houston, so did the number of nonprofits. Today, our city has around 15,000 nonprofits, all of which require specialized skill in order to serve Houstonians. Yet again, the Glasscock School answered. With thanks to the late Damaris and Hank Hudspeth, we established the Center for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership. It serves the educational needs of Houston's nonprofits. It's been so successful that it's gone beyond Houston. We're now in 47 states and 5 countries. When we offered our first course, the United States saw women making 58% of a man's salary for doing the exact same job. In 1986, as women across the nation continued to fight for equal rights, Rice named Dr. Mary McIntyre the Dean of the School of Continuing Studies, the first female dean in the history of Rice. In 2006, the school was renamed the Suzanne M. Glasscock School of Continuing Studies, the only school at Rice named exclusively for a woman. My friends, there's a reason that we started tonight with Mary and Susie. They led the celebration because it was their efforts that made this possible. It was their leadership, their willingness to take risk, and their tireless quest for progress. And speaking of progress, let's talk a little bit about public education. We've all seen the headlines. 79% of HISD students are economically disadvantaged. Only 1 in 5 earn post-secondary credentials. Before the pandemic, just 47% of students were considered kindergarten ready. And just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, you may have read this in the Chronicle, the report was that 77% of the teachers in Texas were considering leaving the profession. 77%. Imagine an industry that announces that 77% of their leaders are leaving. It's a little heavy for a celebration. But there is good news. Under leadership from individuals like HISD Superintendent Millard House, Deputy and Superintendent Rick Cruz, I see Rick in the background there, HISD has laid out a strategic roadmap, and it's not just a strategic roadmap. They are taking steps, including an 11% average pay increase for all teachers, a significant increase for new teacher salaries. They're going to continue to take steps, and we are too. This is where we come in. The Glasscock School's Center for Education, our early childhood literacy programs, and our Center for College Readiness are strategically positioned to create teacher leaders from pre-K through 12. Since 2013, we have produced a district-recognized Rookie of the Year every single year. The reason this is important is the teachers who leave our programs on day one are prepared. You may call them a rookie, but they are prepared for the classroom and the public classrooms of Houston, and they immediately make a difference. Our commitment to education doesn't end with high school. At no time has lifelong learning been more important. The Glasscock School has been and continues to be a national leader in personal development programs. Today, we provide opportunities to enrich life with meaning and purpose through our Community Learning and Engagement program and the Masters of Liberal Studies program that I referenced earlier. These programs are unmatched across the country. And if you haven't registered for a class this fall, just come see me. I think I can make that happen. As I said earlier, the challenges we face are common to every generation, and just as we responded to an industry need with our first class in 1968, we responded again in 2018. When a certain tech company that I'm not going to mention passed us over as headquarters, a rumored reason was we lacked a pipeline of workers with comprehensive tech skills. The Glasscock School answered. We launched 7 comprehensive technology boot camp programs. To date, we've enrolled nearly 2,000 boot camp students who will infuse Houston's technology workforce with highly trained individuals. Rice's boot camp graduates earn on average more than $30,000 per year above what they earned before they entered this program. Number 8, I'm getting to the end here. If we were to look for a single symbol to visualize the growth and progress made over the last 55 years, we need look no further than where we are tonight. As our enrollments have grown to nearly 5 times the size of Rice's undergraduate population, leaders like Mary and Susie and Mel and the Anderson and Clark families had the vision and foresight to build this stunning facility. The Anderson-Clark Center opened in 2014. It allowed us to grow our scope, our enrollments, our technology use within the classrooms to spread it beyond this building to Houston. One thing that I'm not sure everybody knows is where we are positioned. The most popular entrance at Rice, the most used, is right outside that building right there. I don't think that's an accident. But it's not just a place for Houston to gather. It also allows us to reach beyond campus. And at the onset of the COVID pandemic, the rise of disinformation left many searching for reliable research-based information to navigate the unprecedented time. We responded with a program called Open Rice, a program offering expertise from Rice faculty and community experts completely free and online. The Glasscock School, once again, meeting the moment. I'm looking around the room and I see several faculty members who have participated in that Open Rice program. I can't name everyone, but I really appreciate it. I just shared over 9 instances over 55 years where the school has made impact. I guess I could go on with 9,000 more. We don't have that much time. Everybody's getting parched. But you'll notice some common themes in the few chapters of our story. They do tell a story of leadership. They still tell the story of taking risk, of the power to experiment and innovate, and they tell the story of progress. So as this story continues towards our 60th anniversary, we embrace the vision set forth in 1967, evolved and perfected over 55 years that brought us exactly where we need to be in this moment, uniquely positioned and equipped to address today's challenges. The question for the Glasscock School tomorrow is not just what's next. It's also what more, as many of you can attest. When you figure out something that works, and Mel and I were talking about this at the beginning of the event, when you figure out something that works, then you go for scale. What more can we do? How can we serve more Houstonians? We have built proven models in personal and professional development that can drive Houston forward, and it is time to do more. Tonight's a night for celebration, a celebration of all the progress. Tomorrow, we set our sights on more. Everyone is here today because you helped us arrive at this point. And I trust tomorrow you will help us do more. Thank you very much. So we are equal parts grateful and fortunate to welcome our next guest, who told me to keep the bio introduction short. Reginald DeRoche previously served as Rice's Howard Hughes Provost and William and Stephanie Sick Dean of Engineering. Tonight, we welcome him in his first year as Rice University's 8th president. He serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the university and its 7,500 students, 8 schools, more than 700 faculty, nearly 3,000 staff. Please join me and go ahead and raise a glass and welcome President Reggie DeRoche.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you all for being here. That was truly an inspiring summary of Glasscock's incredible accomplishments. I've had the honor and the pleasure the past 2.5 years of working closely with Rob while I was provost in our weekly meetings, normally starting with a summary of his daughter's gymnastics achievements. She's an incredible gymnast. Then we'd go to soccer, and my daughter's soccer, and then somehow he sneak in North Carolina basketball in there, and then we move on to business right after that. And he'd come with a list of 8 to 10 things that were just creative, different about how he would continue to engage with the city, always guided by excellence and serving our great city. So Rob, thank you for your leadership. Anyone who's followed Glasscock in the past few years would be impressed with the school's ability, particularly recently, to pivot to what the community needs. Rob mentioned the boot camps and Open Rice are great examples of the continued flexibility and the ability to meet people where they are, not where you think they need to be. Focusing our efforts on the issues where we can make the biggest impact and where we excel the most is one of my top goals as Rice's 8th president. I believe this strategy will push Rice to new heights on all fronts: academics, research, student experience, and relationships with alumni, partners, and others in the Houston community and beyond, including the Glasscock School's constituents. I like to say that one of the greatest assets is our connection to and relationship with the city, and the Glasscock School is instrumental in fostering that connection. Unlike my predecessors who came into their presidency at Rice from outside the institution, I started the job with an intimate knowledge of the university and established relationships with people across campus and across the city. Still, I feel I have more to learn, so I've been spending much of my time casting a wide net across campus through organized listening sessions to meet and hear from additional people so that I can better understand where Rice is and what our ambitions are moving forward. Based on what I've learned thus far and my own thoughts about the future of Rice, my goals are to continue to raise the excellence of the university to higher levels at the national and international level as a premier research university with greater visibility and greater impact by working on and solving some of the world's most pressing problems. Research, scholarship, and creative pursuits remain the societal framework on which ongoing solutions are discovered, refined, and ultimately implemented. The work being done in all fields, from the humanities to the sciences, from music to architecture, have become more interdisciplinary than ever. Solving the world's most pressing problems requires that we work across a range of disciplines offered at Rice. For decades, the Glasscock School has been doing just that. As Rob said so eloquently, your school, this school, exists to extend the excellence of Rice to every corner of Houston and beyond. The Glasscock School is vital to Rice's success because of the diverse audiences it reaches through a variety of curricular offerings. The school touches K through 12 undergraduate students, graduate students, professionals seeking additional education in specified areas, and lifelong learners who want to grow and be inspired by the knowledge of our great faculty. Continuing to broaden our scope of people you reach, that the school reaches, and the programs it offers is important as the school continues to build a bridge between Rice and the community. Something I find extremely valuable and want to build on with all of you in the years to come. As we embark on new ways to engage with members of our community, local industry, and alumni, the Glasscock School will be critical in developing new programs that can pull in audiences in extremely meaningful ways. So before I conclude, again, I want to thank Rob for his exceptional leadership, his incredible staff here in the school for the dedication to extending Rice University's commitment to educational equity and access by offering lifelong and life-changing personal and professional development programs to the Houston community and beyond. And a very special thanks to Susie and Mel, the Glasscocks, for making all of this possible. We appreciate your support and your leadership and your vision. Thank you.
As we close the, I guess, the formal part of the celebration tonight, I want to call your attention to the painting across the room. Solowitz's wall drawing 1115 was installed in the fall of 2019. We built all sorts of programming around it. It's an amazing conceptual work of art that inspires and dazzles on a daily basis. Imagine walking in this building and it's like a light show every morning. Now I want to call your attention to the image behind me. It's composed of thousands of photos. It's representative of the thousands of people impacted by the Glasscock School over 55 years. So many images and so many people that distinguishing one of them is actually quite difficult. By the time we join here again, so there's your invitation for the 60th, my hope is that it will be even more difficult to distinguish, that each pixel will be an image. And this only happens if we're successful. It only happens if we work together. I invite you to continue the celebration, to wander our halls, to view our art exhibits, and to thoroughly enjoy yourselves this evening at the Suzanne M. Glasscock School of Continuing Studies. Thank you for being here.